It's just about the turn of the millennium, and the greatest warrior in Denmark, maybe even the world, is almost struck down while dreaming of a peaceful land. Shocked back to reality, Thors begins to hack away at the forms for him, following a repetitious dance he knows too well. Kill the fathers and sons, the brothers and husbands, burn the villages out, and take what scurries forth as slaves, inflicting either death or fates one might argue even worse. Day in and day out, that is his role, one he must imagine will be passed down to his son, at least if Helga provides him a son instead of a daughter next time, casting this current one aside after just a single moment. But she insists, by his admission the only time she was ever angry with him, saying,
"Give her a name."
In their world, a name is a mark of importance, only bestowed on a life with value, as seen with Askeladd, whose father only accepts him once he proves skill in combat. Unnamed before that point, he was only ever referred to as that slave child covered in ash, hence Askeladd. To have a name is to have value. Helga insisting the child be named, it's claiming that this is a life worth naming, yet it's a life which has done nothing, literally nothing yet, a life which won't since women are prevented from doing anything at all in this world. A life which has only ever seen this room, yet with cries, with the fury of lost family, with the sort of passion of life Thors has seen and taken from others on the battlefield over and over. If it can express just as much as a full life, then well, maybe that value was always there. I mean, if it can lead Helga to speak up against the greatest warrior, isn't it worth such a risk, apparently just for being born? All the rest, the war and the glory, what do those prove of value if this little one can already make such a noisy mark on adult lives? Those things must be false, all of them. Life needs nothing more than itself to be worthwhile. Thors gives up the blade with this new context because it makes murder the ultimate crime. The best he can do for the world is to foster this young life as it is instead, where a 5-minute lack of food or a missed nap is all it takes to elicit so much, ensure that it never grows to feel a need for conquest and glory, for so much more at so much cost. To keep them satisfied with the process itself respects all that life is worth. Now, as the next in line to lead the Viking, Thors could have continued killing in service of fostering his child, running off to the battlefield so that she would be secure at home. Eventually, he wouldn't even have to rush off, just sit in a big chair, command, and be respected. If he really wished, his children would never have to work a day in their lives. But those riches, they would only serve to spoil the innocent joy, to present life as needing supplements to be enjoyed, needing to take from another to be enjoyed. He doesn't want his children to know those false complications which could lead them to desire the deaths of others, and with the idea of Valhalla, even the deaths of themselves. And he knows too well, the change of one man's mind in this world turns princesses into slaves. This empire could fall, and anyone bearing his name would be the first to be punished, comfort swiftly becoming bondage. He can't truly guarantee them a good life when so many other wills seek otherwise. In short, the sum of his experience teaches him that this life here in Denmark has no reward, not for him or for his children. So, in their next battle, he fakes his death, returning to gather Helga and Ylva and sailing across the sea to Iceland. The greatest warrior, who could have lived lavishly doing what was dead-eyed automatic to him, becomes a farmer in inhospitable land. They walk long distances for drinkable water, shovel snow off the roofs, bring sick animals into their home, and during the freezing cold, build their own tools and utensils, all of this and more. It is a daily toil with no end, with no advancement out of it, developing new skills each day to meet the never-ending challenges. His life could have been so much easier, but for his children's sake, it isn't. Far away from war and slavery, they should be as happy as can be. But something opposite is always brewing. Ylva begins to beg for slaves to do their work for them, and the younger son, Thorfinn, dreams of adventure while playing war with all the other boys. Neither is actually content with this life that Thors works so hard for. This comes to a head years later when Thors is found, as the Viking arrive and threaten his entire village if he doesn't comply, forcing his hand back into combat. The village, which will be sending a few healthy sons with him, is elated, finally having their chance to achieve glory and enter Valhalla, including an envious Thorfinn who wishes to go at only 6 years old. Clearly barred, in response he roughhouses too rough, no longer just discontent with his peaceful life, but actively angry with it, eventually digging through Thor's old things to find a real weapon rather than his now discarded wooden sword. And he does, a dagger perfect for his size. Stopping him though, and seeking to impart all he learned, Thors tries to explain the evils of combat to his son, summarized by the line,
"You don't have enemies. The truth is that nobody has them. Nobody in this entire world deserves to get hurt."
The statement has everything we discussed behind it, every bit of experience and logic which changes Thors so much, but his son rushes off in anger instead, very much failing to get the point. How did this kind of hateful desire emerge in the son of someone who took so many steps to go against that very thing? Well, remember how Thors learned all this. It wasn't through words others said to him, the men begging for their loved ones against his blade. It was from experiencing it himself, knowing he could now be in that position. He had to know what cruelty was. He had to hold what it stole, to know how important avoiding it is, and that only happened from experiencing all of it. The crying faces, the screaming and kicking as they're carried away. He had to see all of this horror, and how little it once meant to him, to know what this world could do, how far it would go. He needed all of that to feel that Iceland was better. And without this context, well, it does seem needlessly harsh. As Thorfinn wonders,
why do we work this hard to live on an island that's so far north?
To him, who has heard the words, yes, but only ever experienced this land of long walks for water and freezing temperatures, these are the worst things. These are what steals time and kills men. They are cruelty itself. He can hear that slavery is bad, but he can feel that the cold is too, and what we feel, what our bodies can immediately respond to and process unconsciously, those will always yield the first response for survival's sake. Leif, his almost uncle, can speak about a crew dying on adventure, but to a 6-year-old boy yet to lose someone, death isn't real yet. It's just a concept, an idea in abstract space, detached from tears and sadness. While the biting cold, that feels pretty real and pretty sad. To Thorfinn, slavery, death, those are only imaginary pains. There is no way for them to be awful to him, so Iceland is what's awful instead. Thor's choice is dumb to him. And this same fact, imagination, allows everything his father knows to be awful to be the amazing things. We see this in the wonder with which Thorfinn looks at his father's dagger. It comes out of the sheath shining, as if daylight emerged from those dark corners specifically for it, sounding as if an epic blade was just drawn despite being so small. Is this actually how it looks and sounds? No, this is how it does to Thorfinn alone in his imagination. It's a tool of war, but to him war is just a story told by the victor who fought righteously against terrible foes who deserved it, good conquering evil. And even then, how bad is inflicting death when death isn't real yet either? It's a grand tale which he can place himself in the lead of, because with no real context, who's to say a 6-year-old boy doesn't have all the skills of great adventurers? Everything a kid doesn't know can be the stuff of heroic dreams because, well, why wouldn't it be? What child dreams of negative things? While Thors may know what a dagger really means, holding the context of the man he ran it through and the blood wiped from it as that man's wife kicked and screamed being forced onto the slave ship, while for him its experience may be depressingly real and complicated, for Thorfinn, kept away from those things, its idea is simple and pure and amazing. It is the best possible thing in the world, contrasted against this place his father gave up for it, the worst possible thing in the world. When you shield a child from all the harm you once experienced, they have no perspective to know why such a thing was even worthwhile. They begin to dream of the pain which once crushed you. This is what leads Thorfinn down his terrible path when Thors is killed by Askeladd and the young boy vows revenge, following these Vikings into 12 years of bloody conquest in exchange for duels. His father did impart positive lessons. He set an example for his son that killing a man in his sleep would be wrong, that conflict should be handled open and honest. In fact, he said that killing a man in general would be wrong. But Thors didn't control the whole message. Askeladd taught him that men could be killed, in fact, even should be killed to survive. And so Thorfinn follows Askeladd, locking himself into this terrible struggle because he had no idea how awful the world could be until it was too late, hundreds of miles in a sea away from home. The ideals of Thors and Askeladd mix, that honor, to ask for a duel like a man instead of stabbing his foe in the back like a coward. That good ideal becomes a mismatch for the world, against a scoundrel that only makes him manipulatable, proving himself worthy with bloodshed time and time again, just to ask for another stacked fight. He suffers exactly because he learned honor from his father, but the world tried to teach him something else. He tries to respect his father, respect that message, and it only tortures him more. Thors tried to keep his son from the worst of the world, but in doing so he gave him a desire for all of it, for this mystical and wider place, and left him unprepared to actually handle it when it eventually found him, like it always would. The world is everywhere and you are one person. You can never keep it from those you care about. To detach them entirely from it will always fail. Canute builds on Thorfinn's story, another boy with a good father to bad results. Where Thorfinn was a peasant though, Canute is royalty, the second prince of Denmark and possible heir to the throne, depending on the direction of infighting. In short, he is meant to lead everything that Thors found wrong with the world. And as far as his father is concerned, that's exactly what he should be. But we've said father twice here for Canute, and those don't actually refer to the same man. His biological father is King Sven, the cruel leader calling for these conquests, while his designated caretaker and chosen father is Ragnar, a Norman who imparts on him Christian values, temperance, and mild manners. Everything a Viking looks down on and literally kills during this current conquest of England. He and Ragnar fish, cook, and enjoy a regular life together, the comfort of royalty but without any of the usual trappings. And Canute enjoys this life very much, saying,
"I never wanted to be born with royal blood."
Plus, we find his only excitement and natural demeanor when preparing a meal with Ragnar. Everywhere else, he's very deep in his shell. We could debate why he enjoys it so, whether it's in his nature or developed by nurture, but either way, for who he is now, the clear answer is that the life Ragnar provides Canute with is the right one for him, the one where he can truly be and express himself in all he desires, where his skills shine. The bond they share, what feeling can we get from that but pure love? But there's an issue. This life isn't right for his situation, his role. If he can't speak in front of other people, how is he supposed to command a nation? If he lives or dies based on the respect of Vikings, how is he supposed to survive while so meek? It's so bad that he's actually a liability. Those with lust for power seek to have Canute placed on the throne instead of his brother, because if they back the easily controlled Canute, then they effectively run the nation. Because of the possible fracture this could cause, the king sends Canute to command a losing battle in London, planning for him to die a warrior's death and end this rebellion before it can begin. This is the unfortunate truth. Sometimes what's right for the child is wrong for the world they're in. Canute himself recognizes this, processing it all after Ragnar's death in his own head in this interaction.
Do you truly think I can survive?
It's my fault. I was meant to raise you to be a Jarl, and I failed terribly. I simply raised you as a child.
Canute knows it deep down. He was failed for his situation. He couldn't just spontaneously grow his toughness, the qualities which would have made him a viable heir, hell, even just a normal Dane. He needed them to be nurtured in him, and they never were. So he asked quite rightly, how is he supposed to go on living in a world like that, one which he was never taught how to survive in? Sure, the fishing and the cooking are nice, but deep down, in having this internal talk, he must wish that maybe just once Ragnar had shown him something more than their peaceful little life. That it didn't take Askeladd, a man who kidnapped him that he hardly knows, to slap him for being unreasonable, to put him in the place this world eventually would. I mean, Canute asks Ragnar to catch him a hawk without a second thought, so how many unreasonable things did the man do for him? How much did he make seem totally fine, only for Canute to now see in the throes of danger never was? He only learned to live in a world that doesn't exist, a world that dies with Ragnar. He gains so much which we know is more valuable, much happier, but does that matter if he only gets to partake in it for 17 years before he's kidnapped again and again, cast out to die by his own biology? Even saying this all never happens, being thrown away and chased across England, Ragnar lives, and they just are happy together. It still won't be forever. Eventually his caretaker will die, and what will Canute do then, a 30-or-so-year-old man that can't even carry on a simple conversation? That love was a prison. A happy one, but it still is. It's reliance just as much as it is care. Each bit of joy that he had that most others don't came at the cost of being able to interact with the world in which that joy takes place. But we get why Ragnar did it. I mean, who can truly allow something bad to happen to their child? To see them get hurt, well, it hurts back. It feels like a failure of one's sacred duty. But each time that bit of hurt is avoided, it simply returns to the back of the line, amplified, ready to happen again with only more resistance since the child finds it that much more unnatural the later in life it occurs. A first scraped knee after 4 years of life is terrible. It's the worst thing in 4 years after all. But a first scraped knee after 17 years of life is even worse. It's the worst thing in 17 years after all. Delayed pain is always more extreme. And with so much going on that's out of their control, with men like Askeladd forcing others' hands, can we say that shielding a child from danger is always right? We know the caretaker won't always be there. The world is so complex they simply can't, so doesn't it make more sense to carefully allow that danger in instead? Instead of Askeladd having to drag him away and slap him, what if someone who Canute loved had explained this all to him? What if, instead of excusing the king's rage Canute cooking a meal, he allowed it to be what it was? Cruelty. Sure, he wouldn't have experienced a total pain to really bake the lesson in, but through that love he could have understood, taken it to heart, and adapted. He could have been kind and knew how to survive this world. He could have put to bed unrealistic desires and moved on. Instead, he's trapped, a child alone in the worst kind of world. This is getting at why the priest tells Canute,
Or the way Ragnar cared about me as well. What are you saying that feeling is then?
His tender feelings toward you were one thing alone: discrimination.
Ragnar, with this power and status of royalty to be protected, makes a grave decision as they flee across England with Askeladd. Faced with a storm and no food, they happen upon a village, and he offers no physical objection to the village being slaughtered, because doing so ensures food and shelter for the prince, with no one alive to run and tell their enemies. He dislikes it, but deep down he still finds it best. The priest shows that there is another option, rushing ahead to shout of the coming danger to the village, much to his own detriment as he's caught and beaten for it. It's not a comfortable decision, but he shows that it could have been made. And could Askeladd and his men justify doing the same to the prince or his guard if they objected? If one of these two had done so instead, then they may have had no choice but to simply steal some food and carry on. Maybe try and wait out the storm somewhere else, however realistic or not. But Canute was raised to be reliant and comfortable, unprepared for such things, and Ragnar would sacrifice the world to keep it that way. Sacrifice the world which afforded them that status to be protected, to make them comfortable in the first place. They only lived so happy because other men went off to die instead. The best thing for Canute, for a boy privileged enough to be so meek in a cruel world, was always the worst thing for that world. his comfort was another's loss. This is inherent to the role of a parent. If you want their life to be better than yours was, either the world must advance, or you must place them above a lower status which still exists. In an unideal world, love becomes discrimination. His biological father, King Sven, is an awful, cruel man. I mean, what kind of father can have his son, first of all raised by someone else, and then sent off to die so easily after all of that? But he is wishing to have sons who can stand the test of their royal blood. He doesn't hate that Canute brings him a meal he cooked just because it's slave duties. There's a next layer of why he thinks that. Because cooking will look like a pointless skill when the fate of a nation and its many people is on the line. If a king is focused on making meals, what happens to his people? Does someone making decisions which impact that many truly have the room to work on an entirely personal thing? Their personality in this role, it isn't just theirs, it is their nation's, a duty they can never escape from since the crown follows blood. To survive, they must know how to rule. And to repay the great advantage they've been given, this is their cost, that their life is not entirely their own, it is their empire's. As the king says, the crown has a will of its own. The power wields you just as much as you wield it. You live and die by the decisions you make with it. It defines you. Canute's role is a comfortable one, but a harsh one which needs proper preparation for his own sake and many others. That's the truth of the situation, and a reason why they must be raised against themselves if they need be. We can't isolate someone from their situation. As Thorfinn struggled from a lack of context, we know how important that is. Everything must be seen as it will be, not as we wish it to be, even the lives we create. Instead, Ragnar falsely created a perfect little world, condensed Canute's life, and failed him. Because yes, he physically outlives Ragnar, but only as an entirely different man, replacing all his gentle kindness with anger, swapping out cooking for conquest. The Canute Ragnar raised is dead, and a new one emerges, surviving by doing everything he hates, and tortured by his eternal task, the next cruel tyrant. This is the cost of the failure placed on him. One of the really odd things about generations, at least in the modern age as things progress so quickly, is that the world a parent raises their kid in is always going to be so different from the one they were raised in. I mean, for a lot of human history, at least, I don't know, like the Middle Ages period, I'm probably getting that a little bit wrong, but really the life you could expect for your kid wasn't very much different from yours. It was more continuity, but in the modern age, even just 10 years, 15 years could really make a difference in how the world is and how we interact with it. I mean, my parents had kids late, so the childhood they had were in the 60s and 70s. For my dad, it was roaming around a poorer part of the city, a little Italy which was propped up entirely by the hospital sitting at its edges. Now, his dad, born some many years before that, was always drunk by the 18th hour of the day and dead by his 49th year, and so opportunity for that family was a little bit scant. That family, my family, so many years ago. The best way I can say it is that shopping carts were the best entertainment for them. As kids, my dad and his friends would go and steal one from the grocery store and then run them down to the bridge by his house. Back then, they didn't have those big inwards wrapped fences on them, just those waist-high barriers, so the kids could all wait until a train was coming along the single track some 100 feet below, and if they timed it just right, toss the cart over and watch the train smash it into nothing. It's wild, but it does speak to, how little else they had to do. Eventually he shaped up, you could say, the fifth of 6 kids, but the third of the bunch to go into the most possible career path at that time and that place. The military. The Cold War was dying out then, but he was still sent to the border with the USSR, where, on casual patrols, you could actually look out of the towers and see a Soviet up in there hurriedly marking down every move you made. Men walking the borders, men watching men walking the borders. So many hours of life spent on something that led nowhere, that was pointless. The only solace from commanded pointlessness was the small German towns he got to explore, witnessing an entirely different way of life from America's grind. Instead of cars careening down the brick streets he grew up on, it was pedestrians gently strolling them on their way to sit in a cafe and just enjoy a beer. It was a way of life which quite literally cared more for human creation and its purpose to facilitate human betterment. I mean, are we really building roads for cars or for people? That's an important distinction. Why build them for cars through the places we live and love? What does that do but add distance between us and life itself? This is probably one of the core tenets of everything I've learned from my father, and so I don't think you can separate the man from those experiences. Someone who was about to buy into the lies of Reagan in the early 80s, only to witness time and time again the pointlessness of military and xenophobia, the incompetence all around him, and to see firsthand that another way was not just possible, but so much kinder to the human experience. The way he yells with passion against conservatives on TV, a 65-year-old man, can somehow make me feel like I'm not progressive enough at times. And that only came about from going and seeing, from being exposed to different culture almost against his will. He didn't want to join the military, he had to. I should send a thank you letter to Frankfurt an der Oder. Your cafe owners in the 80s probably kept my father from hating me. 3 years before the new millennium, a baby was born in one of those same 2 hospitals, just a couple minutes walk from where he grew up. A handful of keystrokes later, a certificate proved in fact that he was a father again. A single sheet of paper with a single letter written without even a thought of argument, which would cause so much more pain and conflict than he could ever know. But a couple minutes walk from that hospital quickly became a 45-minute drive, even as one of my parents worked at it, and my earliest memories are entirely devoid of that part of the city. The place that I was raised, you couldn't steal a shopping cart because all the grocery stores were cubic palaces kept safe by concrete moats. You couldn't throw anything over a bridge because the bridge was 4 lanes of high-speed chaos. The world, it was so small there. I mean, sure, things existed around you. You'd see them out of the car window and off in the distance past the driveway's end, but so much of it was the same cookie-cutter repetition, and even if it was rarely interesting, you couldn't get there anyway. If you even approached the end of the world past the mailbox, someone would come running to keep you from falling over the edge. There was nowhere to go, nothing under the food court signs and box store ceilings and fast food menus. It's like, take everything that my dad witnessed about how the world could be in those small towns and then keep the same population but somehow craft the exact opposite place. Every design was just to put distance between humans and everything we need, knowledge and love in our own lives. When the world ended and time stopped, I was about to graduate college. Spring break went from 1 week to 2 to 4, and finally to eternity, never ending even to this day, closure absent from the defining moments of young adulthood. What was meant to be a short stay at my father's house turned into permanent residency, and what had always been a cold and distant relationship warmed and neared, worlds away, becoming the 10 feet between the big chair and the couch. With horror around and work suspended, distraction was needed, and the TV was right there. Searching for something to satisfy a man with disdain for fiction, the history section provided Deutschland 83, a Cold War thriller about an East German boy sent to spy on the West and finally witnessing how different life could be. It was here with this priming that I learned everything we covered in that first paragraph, growing in volume each time that he could pause and point out an accuracy of the mindset, a location that seemed familiar, a moment in history that he was right there for. I mean, one of the first moments is someone who's only ever known scarcity and control, running freely into a supermarket, shelves stocked not just with more products, but products he couldn't have even imagined, a literally bright and colorful contrast to the Soviet drab. A line on a map, reinforced with the direction of human will to pour concrete and walk in circles, a distance you could cover in 5 minutes, became a worlds away, separating struggle and prosperity. The show had put so directly the things he had learned when he was there himself, and so his own words followed. And it was only then, finally a thoughtful adult of my own, that I came to understand who my father was and the choices he made. The extent of his hatred for the car, for the lack of sidewalks, for the pale, placid paper face of the American suburbia, which functioned only to breathe the distance and hate which allowed the most ill-fit man in recent history to lead the country through a century-defining crisis. But in these answers came more questions. Knowing how much he hated the land of Strodes, knowing how much it almost made me an awful person he couldn't connect with, and that he had had proof of this all long before, I wondered, if it was so awful, why was I raised there? I just had to go for it, man. I'm just been fucking around. It's been like 15 minutes and I haven't said anything good. I don't know. It's trying to find the formula, trying to fit everything into the narrative of a video is like stupid and silly, and it doesn't work. You don't categorize human experience that way, but like here I am doing it anyway, and what's the point? The point is that I have memories that aren't mine. The manic pixie nightmare girl, that moment in Florida when I realized every experience for the most part that I've spoken about here on this channel took place as someone that wasn't me. If you don't know, I guess this is your video. I don't know why you wouldn't know because I have others where I talk about this, but I'm not a man. That's cool. I've realized it a little bit later into the game than all the people around me, and it sucks. Like, it sucks no matter what, right? I'm not going to get into the pain of being trans in this video because that's not what it's about. It's not about how much that hurts. It is about pain being delayed and intensified, and why I wish I would have known earlier. And I wish I would have known earlier because age excludes you from certain things, right? I have the responsibilities of an adult now. I have to get up at 6 for work for these stupid 10-hour shifts where I don't see the sun for like the week. I have to make payments to ensure that my living situation is fine. I have to start a savings because you reach that age where like I need this amount before I can maybe retire one day, and if I don't reach that, then I just never get to retire and my life sucks. When you have adult responsibilities, there's just some things that you can't do anymore, and that means that I just never get to do them. I never got to do them because I was a kid who didn't know themselves. So I was really reclusive. I was always told I was something that I'm not, and it meant that I didn't go out. I didn't make many friends. I didn't want to experience the world because, unknown to me at the time, it wasn't myself. I was so reserved because it wasn't me. And so there's a lot of these experiences I just never had. Like, I was never being a dumb kid out there. I was never doing the things I hear friends talk about now, where they were making out in graveyards and doing all this crazy stuff and going to parties and having and meeting people that night and going home with them and all this stuff that I just never did because I missed the time frame for it, because I wasn't myself in time for it. And that fucks up so much to this day. Like, I'm so obsessed with it. I can't get away from thinking about how I never had these experiences of a young woman, because by the time I realized that I was one, the young part no longer really applied to me in a certain way. Like, right, all of my college experiences, that time of experimentation, everyone I met there, they didn't see me. In the back of my head, my college experience wasn't my own. My young adulthood wasn't my own. Everything before like this year wasn't my own. So the most important moments of my life were not had by me, and it just makes you feel disconnected from them. It makes you feel shitty and invalid because they just don't feel full. They don't feel as real. When you don't have some of the quintessential experiences of the thing that you are, it leaves this invalid hole in you forever, where this hole of invalidity in you forever, where you just are constantly stuck by that thought of like, am I actually the thing I want to be if I did not have these often fundamental experiences of it? And I know the answer is yes. I know it's all comparison and none of it matters, right? I can know that in theory, but the thing in practice is that it still hurts, and it always hurts, that you go the rest of your life thinking, I never got to be that. And if that was the first form of this, then am I really the thing I want to be? The time in which I could have avoided all of this pain has long since passed. My corrections now will avoid more of it in the future, but never to the degree that starting in the past could have. Parts of my life will always have been lived by the wrong me. And the root of it comes down to knowledge, that we can only desire that which we have a conception of. We can want things we haven't experienced, but we can't want things that we didn't even know existed. When I was 10, I didn't have the knowledge to understand why I hated every piece of clothing on the boys' side of the store. When I was 14, I didn't have the knowledge to know why I hated my reflection in the mirror. I didn't have the knowledge to know why my first time felt so boring, so just kind of wrong, that I didn't have the heart to be a part of it at all and just sat there for someone else. All of these moments, my line of memories stretching back into time, there are so many that could have been more bright, more meaningful, if only I had known. But I couldn't know, because that place was where you didn't even have the option to know. It wasn't even a fault of not looking. It was that when you did look, you realized there was no depth, just a single color stretching across your whole view. It was a place meant to rob you, meant to keep you from seeing that something else was possible and lock you into the same generic, unfulfilling life. It presented only one way so that you would never have a will of your own. And this is what I'm rambling on about years prior to now, after only 5 hours of sleep, because I stayed awake finishing George Orwell's 1984, which solidified all of these ideas of social control in my head, and I'm 10 feet away from him saying all of this. And he speaks about having read it before and agrees, as always launching into his disdain for the manufacturing facility of American hate that exists 30 minutes away from every city. And on the TV over his shoulder are the credits of Jeopardy, where a trans woman is continuing a legendary winning streak, earning his praise time and time again without a single negative or even careless remark. And we're eating Greek salads in big bowls, the like twice a week meal that was always waiting for me no matter what kind of day I'd had. And with this context I'd missed for so many years, I was finally happy to understand how I could become the person that I am. I'm so grateful for this stability, for knowing that whether I'm a freelance editor, a broke YouTuber, an engineer, or just a stupid crying child years before, there was always half a head of romaine, some cherry tomatoes, a handful of olives, just a bit of onion, feta cheese, and cheap packet home mixed dressing waiting. I'm grateful for this roof above my head, and the roofs above my head across every moment I've known, purchased with the hard work of 2.5 jobs to pay for that house out in Papertown Nowhere, where I got a much better education from the city school he had, and was able to pick something besides the military. I'm thankful for the safety and security which have afforded me the ability to engage in the process of the mind which were once reserved for society's highest classes, and which to this day are still somehow not guaranteed. I want to read every book, appreciate each word, take that thirst for knowledge which my mother hates, which my brother failed to grasp, which the world around him fails to express. I want to take it and run with it, take it so far that he can know all those hours worked had a purpose, so that he can be proud of a child who is happy in doing something truly valuable. I don't want to give up and accept the work I hate, becoming a mess of depression that makes him find his will even weaker than it already feels. When I consider an early end to this, or to life, I imagine the pain that he could feel, wondering if it was all his fault. But I don't wonder, because the unfortunate truth is that my pain which could cause his pain comes about from all of that sacrifice. That the choices I had from that sacrifice aren't as grand as they might have thought. The mistakes of my past are my own. I accept my blame. But we can't want things that we don't even know exist. I chose this path in college, which locked me into a terrible, hateful, entirely wrong for me field because I didn't think there was any other choice. They always told me that this was the best for me. I silently accepted the cruelty of my body's chemicals because I didn't think that there was any other choice. They always told me that this was me. I didn't even ask who I was. They told me who I was. So when they said it was best for me, how did they actually know? Was it best for me, or was it best for them? The signs were there. The other side of the store was there, but it was easier to yell at me for hating the half you knew and forcing it on me anyway. I still can't wear polos to this day. Each moment where I resist settling into the career that could kill me, I bear the duality of knowing that such a thing could be a blessing, but that it isn't the right blessing for me. Or knowing that so much was sacrificed in my name, but that they got the name wrong. How are you meant to love a great gift as the wrong recipient? I didn't want the security of isolation. I didn't want the stupid bigger yard. I didn't want the engineering degree. I wanted to walk those streets where you could point out so many memories, where I could see so many interesting things. I wanted to be in my favorite place in the world still to this day. A place which so gracefully revived, reformed itself into one half of the city's queer paradise. The place where, both of us lacking the words for what it meant at the time, there were trans neighbors. Where the example I needed was literally next door. I could have seen. I could have known. I could have been me with so much less pain. But instead, you fled from there, taking me with. To know what was best for me, you had to know me. And to know me, I had to know me. And how could I do that with no options? For so long, I almost became what you hate because of that place, but you left me there to embody it. That distance we always felt, and how long it took me to break that place's grip and know you. Why did you set that in motion? We're in my car, stuck at the perpetual red light by his house and on the way to the ER. He was going through terrible withdrawal, unable to kick the habit after jumping the fence at rehab number 3. Time is passing without words until he breaks the silence. I didn't know how to deal with what you told me. I had to drink because of that. I don't remember what I said. We get there and he's checked in, and I try to wait even though I don't know what to say, but he tells me to go home, and so I do, but I'm back again in just a few hours, and now we're both home. But the distance between those seats feels like I never picked him up. And sometime later he says that he didn't mean those words, but that's not a chance that I'll forget the truth they held. I understand the mismatch now. I understand how he knew what was awful about that place, but still sacrificed to bring me there. Because what is awful about that place is mindless ease, lack of decision, and eternal stasis. It is bastardized comfort. To know me, he would have had to walk those streets by my side, dealing with the constant what and why. To let me have neighbors that broadened identity would mean having to learn and explain identity himself. To show me the world would have been to understand the balance of pain and care, to understand when to help and when to watch, instead of just locking a kid inside. To raise me would have been complicated, but to sacrifice was simple. To work much more, but to know that working much more meant thinking much less, caring much less, buying a TV to do the teaching for you, an honorable way to never be home. To never let me see all the things I could be, so that he never had to adapt himself either. He stuck us both in stasis and hoped that nothing would change. That if something like this happened, well, we would just never know. But a lack of options isn't safety. It's just guaranteeing that the pain comes later and greater. And now, we both have to deal with learning a new world so late into the game. This is what I'm stuck with. The desire to make proud someone that, in many ways, I can't respect. The need to see his will carried forward when that will never included the real me. The inheritance of everything good which he thinks is absent from the world, and the absolute proof that he failed to put it in the world himself. A sacrifice in someone else's name, but with the consequences on mine. It's midnight. And I'm driving home after just having just a fun night out after, God, just one of the worst weeks in recent memory where I've doubted everything, and that led to some discarded recordings of anger that were once in this video. And I don't think I have an answer, right? Like, I don't really think I have a conclusion to this besides it sucks. Because it does, and it always will. I'm forever going to wish that someone would have made a decision that was right for who I can't help but be instead of who they wanted me to be. I'll always be sad that my parents failed, and I'll always be dealing with the consequences of that. But at the same time as forever dealing with those consequences, and that I can never escape from those, that I can never get back that time, that I can never reclaim that mess of youth and have everything that would make me feel more valid. It's not like it defines me entirely. I'm still here talking about this all with friends on the drive home from playing card games. I'm still here going to Friendsgiving and laughing the night away by saying, what did Fujimoto mean by this? Because we talked about woke up as a girl's disease, or I actually forget what it's called. I get to be surrounded by just wonderful things and wonderful people because of the choices that I made, because of what I did within those bounds that were set for me, and how I pushed against them, how I expanded them, how I did not let it keep me from that knowledge forever, that something inside of me still searched for it, and I still found it. And that no matter what, I would have to find it. And I get to have what I think is happiness in my life because of the decisions that I have made, not the birthright that I couldn't help, not what I inherited from the mistakes of the generation before me. I still get to wake up every day and choose to be me despite what was laid out for me, despite everything that was wrong for me. Just by breathing, just by existing, I keep doing that. Even when it doesn't feel like I'm making decisions, I am, and they are mine. And I must live with them, just as I always have, but each day they become more and more detached from that past, more and more my own, that they will make mistakes inherently, always, forever. Our parents will fuck us up. And I'll never get away from that. I'll never get that time back. But the time I have right now is definitively my own. And I don't know if it's time I enjoy because of nature or nurture. I don't know if I am just the result of something I can't help or the conditions around me that I could barely shape. Maybe I'm only enjoying these silly moments because I had to in some grand causality I can't help. But as far as I know, I'm experiencing happiness from them. And as far as I can think, I chose them. They feel right for me because I've made them right for me. I've surrounded myself with the things right for me. And my parents, at least, can't take that away. Maybe the world will someday, but I'm free from that one thing we can never help, at least. Inherently, always, one day, we become free of it. And even if we have to worry about the rest, hey, it's one less thing. It doesn't make the pain all go away, but I think it lets me accept it, at least, to know that if it wasn't there, I wouldn't have these friendships I enjoy so much, these people I love, and the experiences I wouldn't trade for anything. I'm not glad the pain happened, but I guess I'm glad I get to have the results of it. I guess that's this video finally ended.